You'd probably imagine that in 1939, the only way a regular soldier could hurt a tank was with a big, noisy cannon. But the Polish army quietly did something very different. They handed a few carefully chosen infantrymen a strange-looking rifle, packed in wooden crates that literally said, "Do not open. Surveillance equipment." Inside those crates was a weapon that looked almost like an oversized hunting rifle. But when you pulled the trigger, it could punch into a tank's armor and cause serious internal damage to the vehicle. The Germans had no idea this thing even existed until they invaded Poland, captured hundreds of them, and liked it so much they put it into service for themselves. This is the story of the wz.35 anti-tank rifle, the secret gun that challenged tanks with physics instead of explosives, and ended up being used on both sides of World War II. Stay with me because by the end of this video, you'll never look at just a rifle the same way again. Roll back to the late 1920s. Tanks are still relatively small, thin armor, light turrets, mostly used to support infantry. But everyone can see where this is going. Armor is getting thicker, guns are getting bigger. And if you're just a soldier on foot with a rifle, you're going to need something more than courage to stop a tank. Inside the Polish General Staff, an officer named Tadeusz Felsztyn becomes obsessed with a bold idea. What if, instead of firing a big shell from a heavy gun, you fired a very small bullet at an absolutely extreme speed? He studies experimental German hunting cartridges that can punch through steel plates. From there, he commissions work on a new, extra-long cartridge, a stretched-out version of the classic 7.92mm Mauser round filled with far more propellant than normal. Now they need a rifle that can handle it. Enter Józef Moroszek, a young designer who takes the trusted Mauser bolt-action layout and transforms it into a dedicated anti-tank weapon. By 1935, his design is ready. The official name is long and dry: Karabin Przeciwpancerny wzór 35, Anti-Tank Rifle, Model 35. But soldiers give it a much shorter nickname, UR. Officially, that's Uruguay, a fake export destination used as a cover story in the paperwork. In reality, this rifle is going nowhere near South America. It's going straight to the front line. If you saw the WZ-35 on a battlefield, you might not even realize what it could do. No giant gun shield, no huge wheels. It's just a very long rifle with a bipod at the front and a box magazine sticking out of the side. On paper, it looks simple. It's a bolt-action rifle. It fires a 7.92 x 10 to the 7th millimeter high-velocity round. It uses a 4-round box magazine, and it weighs around 10 kilograms with the bipod attached, heavy for a rifle, but light compared to any anti-tank gun. But the real magic happens when a bullet leaves the barrel. Most anti-tank weapons of the time rely on very hard projectiles to drill a hole straight through armor. The Polish designers do something different. They use a lead-cored bullet, pushed to extreme velocity. When that bullet strikes armor, it doesn't just poke a neat little hole. It hits with so much energy that the armor itself starts to fail, causing internal cracking, splintering, and serious damage inside the vehicle. Yet you're not just trying to pierce the tank's armor. You're using impact and stress to make the tank's own protection work against it. In tests, this rifle can defeat the armor of early war tanks at typical combat distances. Suddenly, those light and medium tanks that look terrifying to infantry have a very real problem to worry about. And here's the really surprising part. Because of a large, efficient muzzle brake on the barrel, the recoil is tamed so well that it feels similar to firing a normal Mauser rifle, even though this cartridge carries far more propellant. To the shooter, it feels like a powerful but manageable rifle. To the tank crew, it feels like a sudden, violent impact inside their armor. Now, if you invent something like this, you might be tempted to show it off at parades, brag about it in newspapers, or at least tell your allies. The Polish army does the exact opposite. The WZ-35 becomes one of the most secret weapons in Europe. Official documents avoid even using its real name. Multiple code names are used. The story about export to Uruguay is repeated so often that even some officers start to believe it. When finished rifles leave the factory, they are locked into wooden crates with stenciled warnings like, "Do not open," "Surveillance equipment." On the outside, it looks like boxes of camera gear or optics. On the inside, it's a rifle designed specifically to threaten early tanks. Even within the Polish army, not everyone is told the truth. Only carefully selected soldiers are let into the secret. By the summer of 1939, around 6,500 rifles have been produced. Most of them are still sealed away. Then, and on the 15th of July, 1939, just weeks before Europe will explode into war, an order goes out. Selected marksmen from infantry and cavalry units are quietly pulled into classrooms, sworn to secrecy, and finally allowed to open those mysterious crates. For the first time, they see the WZ-35. They're given quick, focused training: how to carry it, how to deploy it, where to aim on a tank, and how to change positions after firing. Then, the rifles go back into their anonymous boxes. When these men open them again, it will be with German tanks already rolling toward them. Picture this. It's early September 1939. On the outskirts of a Polish village, a thin mist hangs over the fields. Two soldiers are crawling into position behind a small ridge. Between them, they drag the long, awkward WZ-35. The assistant gunner carries a canvas bag filled with those strange, extra-long cartridges. They've had barely any time to get used to this weapon. They've fired only a few live rounds. They know one thing: if they use it correctly, this rifle can seriously damage a tank and stop it. Across the open ground, the German column is advancing. Armored cars in the front, light tanks behind them. Tracks grind over the road. Engines roar, the anti-tank team sets up. The rifle rests on its bipod. The gunner lies prone behind it and adjusts the sights to 300 meters. He exhales. His assistant slides a 4-round magazine into place from the side until it locks with a click. The first tank comes into view. The gunner aims low on the side armor, just behind the front wheel. He squeezes the trigger. From a distance, it doesn't look dramatic. There's a sharp crack, a blast of muzzle flash, and a small puff of dust where the bullet hits the tank. For a heartbeat, nothing seems to change. Then, inside the tank's fighting compartment, the armor has been stressed and damaged. Critical components can be shattered, controls can fail, and the crew suddenly realizes something is very wrong. From the outside, you just see the tank slow down, then grind to a halt. The assistant already has the next magazine ready. He removes the empty one, locks the new one in. They shift a few inches, pick another vulnerable target, fire again. Along other stretches of the front, tiny teams like this are doing the same thing, ambushing armored columns from ditches, from barnyards, from tree lines. They aim for flanks, for engine compartments, for weak spots around turrets and side plates. They know they can't stop the whole invasion, but they can knock out lead vehicles, clog the roads, force the Germans to slow down, and maybe, just maybe, buy a few more hours for the units behind them. For years after the war, a myth will grow that this rifle was kept so secret it was never used. The reality is the opposite. Most of the WZ-35 rifles that actually reached frontline units were used in combat during that desperate September campaign. Secrecy kept the Germans from preparing for it. But secrecy couldn't save Poland. Under the combined assault of Nazi Germany from the west and the Soviet Union from the east, Poland is crushed in a matter of weeks. In the chaos of retreat and encirclement, many WZ-35 rifles are destroyed. Some are abandoned beside burnout vehicles, and others are hidden. But hundreds and possibly thousands are captured intact. German ordnance officers start opening those mysterious crates that say surveillance equipment on the side. Inside, they find this odd, long rifle with unfamiliar ammunition. They test it. They measure it. And soon they realize exactly what they've captured: a compact, effective anti-tank rifle ready to issue with plenty of ammunition in the depots. The German army adopts it under a new name, Panzerbuchse 35, P, Tank Rifle 35, Polish. Later, some are redesignated again as PZB 770, P, as logistics and naming systems evolve. German factories begin to adapt the ammunition, replacing the original Polish bullet with hardened steel cores of their own, trying to squeeze more performance out of this captured design. And they're not the only ones. Italy buys around 800 of these rifles from German stocks and renames them Fucile contro Carro 30 P, Anti-Tank Rifle 30 Polish. Finland acquires a small batch too, giving them a Finnish designation and using them first as training weapons and later in limited combat roles once their own wars with the Soviet Union intensify. The same rifle that was once guarded as one of the Polish army's deepest secrets is now appearing in German manuals, Italian unit lists, and Finnish inventories. The origin story, the secrecy, the code names, the fake Uruguay exports is reduced to a small note in brackets. But the war doesn't stand still. By 1941 and 1942, tanks are no longer the thin-skinned machines of the early 30s. Armor gets thicker. Sloped plates appear. Designers have learned from those early defeats. Against the light tanks and armored cars of 1939, the WZ-35 was highly effective. Against later, much heavier vehicles, up-armored Panzer IVs, Tigers, T-34s, a small rifle-caliber bullet, no matter how fast, simply doesn't have the same impact. The German army begins to favor new solutions: larger anti-tank guns, explosive-shaped charge weapons, and eventually disposable launchers like the Panzerfaust. The WZ-35, in German hands, is gradually pushed into secondary roles. It's used against lightly armored vehicles and transports as a long-range anti-materiel rifle for targeting equipment, gun shields, and other critical points on the battlefield. On the Polish side, the tragedy is even deeper. The factories that built the WZ-35 are gone or captured. The officers who dreamed it up are dead, in exile, or imprisoned. The weapon itself is scattered across battlefields under foreign flags. Here and there you still catch glimpses of it, in blurry black and white photos, slung over a German soldier's shoulder in North Africa, propped against a trench wall on the Eastern Front, or lying abandoned in a ditch after yet another retreat. A weapon that began as Poland's silent answer to the tank has become a ghost, used in many places, belonging fully to none of them. But to really understand this rifle, you have to strip away the paperwork, the renamings, the technical terms, and go back to that first moment in the field. 2 men, 1 rifle, 4 rounds in the magazine. They've been told very little about where this weapon came from. They don't know its code names. They don't know that it will later serve in German hands. They don't know that most people will forget it ever existed. All they know is this: there's a tank in front of them. If they use this rifle well, they might be able to stop it. If they fail, that tank will roll right over their position. The assistant gunner's hands shake slightly as he loads the magazine. The gunner presses his cheek against the stock, his finger resting lightly on the trigger. He isn't thinking about physics, about armor diagrams, about penetration tables. He's thinking about his family, about the road behind him, about the men in the trench relying on him. When he pulls the trigger for a split second, that enormous machine in front of him is at the mercy of one precise shot. In that moment, the real secret weapon isn't hidden in the crate. It's in the determination of the person behind the rifle. Today, the WZ-35 is a niche curiosity. You don't see it in blockbuster movies. It's rarely modeled in video games. Most documentaries on World War II barely mention it, if at all. But if you zoom in on those few weeks in 1939, this forgotten rifle was the main anti-tank weapon of Polish infantry platoons, a weapon built around a radical high-velocity concept, kept so secret that enemy intelligence completely missed it, captured in large numbers, and then turned back against the world by the armies that overran its homeland. It was effective, it was innovative, and it almost disappeared from popular memory. That's why this rifle matters. Not because it won the war, but because it shows how even small, hidden inventions can briefly tilt the balance of power in the hands of a few determined people. Sometimes, the most fascinating weapons of World War II aren't the famous ones you've seen 100 times. They're the ones that sat locked in crates, labeled with a lie, waiting for the day someone finally ignored the warning and opened the box. If you enjoyed this story, and you want more deep dive videos about obscure weapons, secret projects, and guns that ended up being used on both sides of history, make sure you like this video, subscribe to the channel, and tell me in the comments which forgotten weapon you want to see next. Thanks for watching, and I'll see you in the next one.